All Cooper CPAs, located in the heart of East Nashville, offer a wide variety of tax services for individuals and businesses. Contact them at 615-257-0646 and visit their website, allcooper.com, for a full list of services.
If you want to feel the wind blowing through your hair and see the great city of Nashville at the same time, check out Nashville Scooter Tours. Trekking through the downtown streets to Music Row with Nashville Scooter Tours is safe, eco-friendly, and a whole lot of fun. They use Xenon electric scooters that go 55 miles on a single charge. Find out more by calling 615-290-5563 or book your reservation today at NashvilleScooterTours.com.
Guns, Obamacare, and immigration. Those are the ingredients this week on Political Soup.
Jeff Meeks and Chris Austin invite you to watch your favorite sports event at the Batters Box at 43 Hermitage Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. The Batters Box offers shuttle service to all Titans home games. It's a great place for friends to gather for the game and after the game. So check out the Batters Box Bar and Grill, and thanks again for sponsoring the show. Bandwidth for today's show is brought to you by SoftLayer.com. We love SoftLayer here at Talkopolis. They are the greatest hosting company ever. They make everything easy. Check out their website at SoftLayer.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Microcasting for your city, Talkopolis.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Political Soup. I'm Joe Williams, along with my counterpart, Mr. Crom Carmichael. Good to have you back. The one consistency that we've had this entire time.
I've made every show.
You've been here every
Yes.
time.
That's good, I guess.
And you've always been on the right side.
I've always been here. Yes.
Would you ever sit on the left side?
I'd sit on the left. It's okay. I can sit on the left.
Hold that thought. We go to our left and welcome in. Well, we're picking on you early.
That's fine.
Bob Tuke, an attorney here in Nashville, very politically active, former chairman of the Tennessee Democratic Committee. Our normal host here on this side is your old friend Chip Forrester, and it's just good to have you guys kind of in line and come and bring. I'm here in the middle. These are the ground rules. I sit in the middle and try to keep both sides from. I hate to say killing each other because that's not fair. It's just to keep everybody.
It's okay even if we agree. These are the issues of the day.
Absolutely. And Crom and I have known each other for years, and so I think we highly respect one another.
That's the best part. One thing my grandfather always told me you better respect, and that is a firearm, a gun. And guys, guns are heavy on everybody's mind right now. And fellas, there doesn't seem to be almost a mid-ground in what we see through media reporting. It's an either or.
Well, I'm not sure about either or. The Dianne Feinstein has brought out her plan, and it's what I found most interesting is that she says everybody has to do all this stuff on behalf of gun control except government employees. Government employees don't have to do it. And if I was trying to create fear among non-government employees, I would do exactly what she's done, and that is to exclude government employees.
Well, and I think even if the current proposal excludes all government employees, my suspicion is that that's error. Obviously, the only people, in my view, who should have access to certain kinds of firearms, assault weapons, are people in the military, obviously, people in security, people in the police force. I'm a Marine veteran. I fought in Vietnam. I have handled and fired more kinds of weapons than you ever even want to think about. And almost all my Marine friends agree with me that most of those weapons do not belong in the hands of anybody unless they're at war or unless they're trying to keep the peace in a very hostile environment.
The term you used, assault weapon.
Yes.
That's kind of a new term outside of the military that's been brought into this argument. Is that a good term, assault weapon, when we start talking about some of the definitions we've seen?
So long as people understand what it means. In 1994 was enacted the assault weapons ban,
right? And
that's where that term comes from. There are certain kinds of weapons that are identified by their characteristics as assault weapons, and they're rapid fire, semi-automatic weapons capable of producing a large volume of firepower. And going along with that, of course, you have to have a high capacity magazine so that as you squirt out all those rounds, you got plenty more rounds to shoot. I think it's insane to have the public have access to those kinds of weapons, because I've used them in anger in a war, and I don't think they have any place among normal people. And I don't know any hunters that use them.
I will say this, I'm baffled, because most of the handguns that people own today are semi-automatic. And let's be clear what a semi-automatic is. A semi-automatic is merely a handgun where you have to pull the trigger each time you want a bullet to come out. It is not a machine gun. And Dianne Feinstein is trying to say that if you have a semi-automatic pistol, that you are in violation. She's trying to get control of those things. And that's just wrong. And the thing that offends me more than anything else is Congress doesn't mind having protection for itself and its members, but the public be damned. And if Dianne Feinstein should be protected, then I ought to have the right to protect myself. And Mayor Bloomberg, he came down to Washington and gave this big speech on it, and then he's got 5 security guards. I think we actually have a little videotape to show how he reacted to the question of whether or not he would give up his security. And I'd like to show that.
Kind of interesting. Let's see the tape.
Mayor Bloomberg, how you doing? Jason, I grew up in Brooklyn. Okay, in the spirit of gun control, will you disarm your entire security team?
We'll get right back to you.
You'll get back to me? Would you like a sip of my soda? Mayor Bloomberg, why can you defend yourself but not the majority of Americans? I mean, look at the team of security you got. And you're an advocate for gun control? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm counting. There are probably more.
Sir, how you doing today?
I'm good.
How you doing? Officer Stockton, NYPD. Do you have ID on you, sir?
I'm credentialed for this.
May I see it, please? Thank you.
Sure.
Why don't we get over here to the streets?
No. Do you even have jurisdiction?
Absolutely, yes, I do. Security jurisdiction, absolutely, sir.
I asked the question. There's nothing. What did I violate?
I'm not saying you did. I was asking if you have ID. That's all. If you have ID or credentials, I can
hold this.
Thank you very much. You have a photo ID, sir? Driver's license?
Well, I'm not going to give you my DC driver's license. Is this standard procedure for the press? It's standard procedure to be questioning members of the press.
Standard procedure ID, sir?
Yeah, it was issued by the conference we were just at.
Well, can I see ID? Photo ID that matches that name, please?
Sure thing.
Thank you, sir.
You going to write it down now?
Oh, no, sorry. You're
going to write it? You're going to write it? Okay. We good?
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. It's none of your business what my date of birth is. See, look. We're getting followed. Ask Bloomberg a question, we get followed. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm counting. There are probably more.
Interesting clip, Crom. Now, I'm going to tell you, as a journalist myself, I thought he was a little overly aggressive at first, and the crack about the drink, you know, that was a little over the edge.
It was really, there was one central point to it.
But from that
Mayor
point on,
Mayor Bloomberg, are you going to give up your weapons that are providing you security with guns?
And of course he should not. And the answer to that is absolutely not.
Then why should you or why should I?
Because we don't require security. Nobody might want to kill me, likely, although there's a number of people in Nashville who might otherwise.
You are an attorney and you feel comfortable saying that.
But the truth is, elected officials and people in certain positions absolutely have to have security, sad to say, in this country. And I want those security people to be properly armed. Now, I don't think citizens need to have that kind of weaponry. I don't care about pistols, to be honest with you. That's not the issue. The issue are the kinds of weapons that were used most recently in Connecticut and also in Aurora, Colorado, used up in Oregon. We don't need weapons like that in the hands of the general public.
Well, what's interesting is this. Bob and I live in nice neighborhoods, and we don't have a bunch of people running around shooting people. But in Chicago, there are a lot of people who own guns up there for self-protection. And I don't think they should have to give up their firearms. The law-abiding citizens in Chicago who simply want to be protected from the criminals, I don't think they should have to give up their guns just because Dianne Feinstein. You know, what's interesting is when she came out with her bill, you know how many people in 10 years have been killed by these mentally ill people? 350. How many children have been killed by drunk drivers in that same 10-year period? Thousands, tens of thousands. So you're going to do away with cars? Or you're going to do away with booze?
It's
No.
just not the right argument. There have been more than 30,000 people killed with guns in the last 10 years, and we need to do better in controlling how we deal with guns, who gets access to guns. I don't want to take away anyone's guns if they're appropriate kinds of weapons for people to have. Of course they need to have personal security. They also need to be able to go hunt, but they don't need assault weapons such as the Bushmaster.
All right, so the devil's in the details, and that's what I
Yes.
want to know. You say no problem with pistols. Dianne says, excuse me, the senator says,
Yeah.
you know, at some point, and I happen to own one, that would be considered an assault weapon because of the clip size.
No, I don't
No,
think
it's not
it
the
would.
clip size. It's
Oh,
the action
I don't know
of
the
it.
size of your clip.
Yeah.
It's the action. It's the action
And it's
of
a
it.
semi-automatic with a 14-shot clip, so
No.
it's over 10, and therefore,
Well, again, the devil's in the details. If you look at the definition of assault weapons, they have specific characteristics, and yours may or may not fit those, but that's the kind of thing that a good, healthy debate can flesh out. And
what's the number then on details? What's the number on the magazine?
well, I think the number on the magazine is 10 rounds. I don't think anybody ought to have a magazine for either a rifle or a pistol that holds more than 10 rounds. There's no reason for it. Hunters don't need it. You don't need it for self-protection. And I will tell you something. You know, when I had led my Marines in Vietnam on patrol, they were forbidden to fire more than to fire on automatic. They were required to fire one round at a time, carefully aimed. If you do that, you do not need a big capacity clip. And that's in war.
Well, Bob and I agree on one thing, and that is what the definition of an assault weapon ought to be, and that is more or less a machine gun, or a gun where you depress the trigger and multiple bullets come out without having to release the trigger.
No, I
and
think
that
an
is
assault. I think an assault weapon also includes semi-automatic weapons that are intended to kill people and that have a high magazine capacity, such as the one used in Connecticut. That was not an automatic weapon. That was a semi-automatic weapon, but that criminal was permitted to fire round after round. I don't know how many ultimately were fired, but hundreds of rounds into little children.
Here's the difficulty with that argument. A semi-automatic pistol with 10 bullets, all three of us are saying should be legal, correct, or should not be taken away. I think we're all just finished saying that. Now, if that guy had gone in there with 2 guns and 2 extra clips, he would have shot just as many children. And then everybody would be saying, oh, we got to take away that gun, rather than recognizing that it's much better to put in security. You know, Bloomberg won't give up his security. Fine, then let's put security in the schools. All you have to do is terminate one lazy bureaucrat and put in a security guard. Every school has either one worst bureaucrat or one worst teacher. Get rid of them, put in a security guard, and then if we want to take away the high capacity clips, fine. If we want to take away the machine gun types, but here's what I don't like. Dianne Feinstein says military style weapons. Not military weapons, military style. Then she gets to define military style however she wants to. And she is defining a pistol that is a semi-automatic as a military style weapon under her definition in the bill. She's made that very clear.
When that bill comes out, it will be very precise as to what an assault weapon is. And I want to disagree with you on what he could have done with a pistol. Even well-trained policemen, Marines, soldiers, they hit approximately 15 to 17% of the targets that they're shooting at, and that's when they're calm. That guy, if he'd had a couple of pistols and a couple of extra magazines, there's no way in the world he would have been able to shoot 26 people. There just isn't. He simply would not have been able to do it. And while he was reloading, he might have gotten stopped like that guy was stopped in one of the movie theaters. So it's really important that they not have access to the kind of weaponry that that fella in Connecticut had.
I got to ask you sure about that 15-70%?
Yes.
Number? Because
absolutely.
If that's the case, they would not pass and qualify for a handgun carry permit in the state of Tennessee.
Well, no, I'm talking about people actually firing in a circumstance that the police fire in and so on. I'm sorry, I don't mean at a target.
Okay. That suddenly becomes very believable just from the adrenaline rush that's going on. It's kind of hard to shoot straight, shoot people shooting at you.
The truth is, even my well-trained Marines, you know, I had to keep reminding them and retraining on making sure that we're firing on target.
And that is the ultimate situation.
The official gun-free zones are the problem. That is where virtually every one of these mentally ill people go. The fellow in Colorado on the movies, he went past 2 movie theaters that allowed guns to go to the ones that was gun-free. He was mentally ill, but he wasn't stupid. So he goes to the place where he knows he's the only one with a firearm, and then he opens fire and shoots people. So if you want to stop the mentally ill, first of all, we should be focusing on identifying the mentally ill people, not identifying 150 million people who may or may not own a handgun. And so the data trying to manage a database of 150 million people is nuts to begin with, and you will not use it to identify any of the real problems, which are the mentally ill people.
Those are not mutually exclusive. Of course we should identify mentally ill people, but we also should have universal background checks. We also ought to have universal carry permits. We can do all these things together. And we should have higher security in schools and responsible officers in the school. What do they call them? They've got a catchword for them.
Resource officers.
Resource officers. That's fine. I think it's a good idea. But I think we ought to do all of those things because we've had too many kids killed.
Well, we have a nice overlap on security guards in the school. I think that would lick at least 75% of the problem, and I think that making everybody register handguns licks virtually none of it, if that's all you're doing.
But it sounds like we've got a lot of agreement here, because I think you'll agree with the background checks in all situations.
A federal background check?
At least a state, if not federal.
Let me say this: if the federal government has the ability, to do federal background checks, then the federal government has the ability to do voter ID. I'll marry the two together. If Bob and I can agree that the federal government has the ability to do background checks, then by golly, we can do voter ID too.
I can't resist this. The background check is to keep people who don't need to be using firearms from having firearms. But voter ID is meant to keep people who should be voting from voting. So no, I won't marry those two together. But there's lots of different ways to solve this problem. If we want to have federal and state background checks and adequate state background checks satisfy the federal requirement, that's fine with me. All I want to do is address all of it so that we don't have these kids killed anymore.
Well, I couldn't get a complete consensus from these two guys on this one, but I bet I can on this one thing, and that is coming up April 15th, Uncle Sam's going to be wanting some money. We won't get into how much, but if you're trying to figure out how to figure out how much you're going to owe him, you can go see our friends over at All Cooper CPAs. Now, they do everything from preparing 1040s to handling all of your business accounting functions. Just check them out at allcooper.com. When we come back, the Affordable Health Care Act, also known as
Obamacare.
That's his word. We'll be back on Political Soup.
All Cooper CPAs, located in the heart of East Nashville, offer a wide variety of tax services for individuals and businesses. Contact them at 615-257-0646 and visit their website, allcooper.com, for a full list of services.
And welcome back, everybody, to Political Soup. I'm Joe Williams. Our special guest this week, Mr. Bob Two. Nashville attorney, teacher, professor, former chairman of Tennessee Democratic Committee, and of course, the man who started all this, Crom Carmichael, to my right. See, when you look at the screen, you get yourself in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
All right. When we left, we were getting ready to talk about the Healthcare Affordability Act, also known as Obamacare. And Crom, I know this subject has a really special place in your heart.
Well, if we can pop up the little graph, you can get this is what the so-called Affordable Care Act. This is what it provides for in terms of subsidies. Now, here's what's interesting. Here we are in Tennessee. TennCare was essentially what Obamacare is, without as much cost. RomneyCare was TennCare without as much cost as Obamacare. TennCare imploded. RomneyCare is in the process of imploding. Massachusetts is telling doctors that they have to take RomneyCare patients if they have a license. They're cramming down the amount that they'll spend. And Obamacare now it's going to become law next year. And the number of people who will be thrown onto Obamacare or get onto Obamacare is going to blow the budget completely away. Here's what's interesting. The supplemental bill for Hurricane Sandy, $50 billion. How much money is raised in the first year by Obama's taxing the so-called rich? $50 billion. So they blew through 100% of the tax increase on one appropriation. Obamacare will dwarf any entitlement that we have. We will have, within 4 or 5 years, we will have 50 million people on Obamacare at a cost of $250 billion a year. It will be 250% of plan before you can say boo. And we know that because that's what happened with TennCare, and that is exactly what's happening with RomneyCare. And Obamacare is both of those on steroids.
Well, I just don't agree, and neither does the Congressional Budget Office report. In fact, implementing Obamacare will cost over 10 years about $1.1 trillion. It's a huge number, but it reduces the deficit, according to the Congressional Budget Office, by $143 billion. So it's going to cost us substantially less to implement Obamacare than to go on the system we're on right now. What all those statistics talk about forgets one thing that's really, really important, and that's the cost of people who have no insurance at all walking into emergency rooms to get the health care that they ought to be getting through their own insurance plans. What Obamacare does is it enables people to get health insurance so that they're not walking into those emergency rooms, and it's a huge boon for small business like my small business, because we will get tax credits for making sure that our employees have health care insurance. So I just completely disagree. I think not only will Obamacare improve the health care system in this nation, it's also going to save us a lot of money.
Well, the amount of the premium under Obamacare is just under $18,000. For somebody making $55,000, and I believe if you could pop up the graph, you'll see what the subsidy is that the government pays or the taxpayers pay. But here's what's interesting, and Bob brings up the CBO. When Medicare was passed in the late 60s, the CBO predicted that Medicare in 1988 would cost $8.8 billion a year. It missed by a factor of 10. It was $88 billion a year. And so believing that the CBO's estimate is anything close to accurate flies in the face of their historical ability to completely misestimate virtually everything.
But was that miss, how much of that miss was based on a miss in inflation? Not necessarily in additional use, but...
You don't miss by 10 in 20 years on inflation.
I agree, but what I'm saying is...
I said 2.5 times. I'll stick with 2.5 times.
Okay.
And by the way, the same kind of people who predicted that TennCare would be a boon to health care in Tennessee and help our state, they're the same kind of people who manage the CBO. And the same kind of people who predicted that RomneyCare would help Massachusetts are the same kind of people that manage the CBO. And so the simple question is this: if I can get a $15,000 subsidy by signing up for Obamacare and only spend $4,000 myself, why wouldn't I do that? That is the fundamental question. Why wouldn't I do it?
That is not how the system works. And furthermore, we should note that the increase in the cost of health care has exceeded the inflation rate in this country by a factor of 2 or 3 or 4. We pay more money for health care in this country than any other industrialized nation, and we're something like 17th on the list of quality and efficiency. We need to improve the system. Remember that Obamacare addresses mostly insurance, not health care. The only real substantive health care issue that it addresses is already in place, and that is to increase preventative care. And that already has effectively helped the health care of millions of Americans already. So it's an insurance bill much more than it's a health care bill. And we've got to get more efficient in our insurance coverage in this nation.
I will push back by saying we've got to be more efficient in the delivery of health care. The third-party payment system is 60% of the cost of health care, and what Obamacare does is take everything wrong with the current system and put it on steroids. Now, when you go into the doctor's office, there are 6 different companies that have to touch that bill in order for it to be finally paid. If we simply had people who could afford, and almost everybody, I'm not talking about Medicaid people, almost everybody else can afford to pay $50 for something because they do for everything else in life except a doctor visit. Can you think of anything else that's insured that's $50 that you have to have an insurance policy to pay for other than a doctor visit? And what happens is it takes that $50 visit and makes it $120 in cost. If you eliminated the insurance component of that part of the healthcare system, and by the way, 95% of the time people touch the healthcare system, it's for a very affordable procedure, such as a physical or a sore throat or a shot or something like this. That's where 95% of it is. Well, why is every time we touch the system have to go through 6 different companies in order to keep track of what the bill was?
Crom, it sounds like you're for a single payor system. That's what that sounds like. And essentially the approach of Obamacare is to keep it in the private sector and not put it in the government sector. And once it's fully implemented with the insurance exchange, each person will be able to pick the insurance company that he or she wants, and on the basis of competitive bidding, if you will, and then you won't have to touch it 6 times. There'll be one insurer, one plan for each person, and that's how it'll work, and it'll be much more efficient. And I believe that. I think it's absolutely true. And there'll be $20 billion in tax credits for 4 million small businesses. So it's going to be a boon, I think, as well as keeping people healthier.
Well, one thing's true. Next January 1st, it goes into effect. And then we'll begin to see how many people decide to take the $15,000 incentive to jump on Obamacare and pay only a couple or $300 a piece themselves. And my guess is it'll be tens of millions more than what the CBO was projecting.
Final word yours?
Final word is that that's not how Obamacare is going to work. People are not going to get subsidies. What they're going to do is get an opportunity to buy insurance at a competitive rate.
Get your order in now. We're going to wrap this up with our last segment. Coming up next, we're going to talk about immigration, both locally, nationally, and these two, who knows where we'll go from there. Stay with us on Political Soup.
From the family grocery hauler to fire-breathing racing engines, the one name you need to know is USA Motor and Machine, located at 51 Cleveland Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. Give them a call at 615-726-3725 or at usamotorandmachine.com.
And welcome back, everybody, to our final segment today on Political Soup. Bob Took is with us. Good to have you.
Great to be
here. From Carmichael, as always, I'm Joe Williams, sitting in the middle trying to keep this thing together. And it's been so joyous today because there haven't been any fisticuffs, no cross words. I'm not sure which one of you I need to be worried about. Final segment today, we're going to talk a little bit about immigration. Crom, the Senate Gang of 8, as they're sometimes called, Republicans, Democrats, got together and say, hey, here's a plan that we think will work. And they put it out there, and the president has come along and brought his own plan.
Well, he hadn't actually announced the plan yet. Right. He says his plan is complete, and he will announce it soon. Now, Bob and I were talking off air here, and my understanding is in Obama's plan, he is saying that illegal immigrants will be covered by Obamacare. And so you've got 10 million or 11 million people that will then be added, some significant percentage added to the Obamacare rolls, which once again the CBO assumed the cost of that would be zero. And so we now know if that's true, it won't be zero. The other question is whether or not Obama actually wants a bill to pass, because I think that becomes a deal breaker.
Well, actually, I think, first of all, it's a good idea to make sure that everybody in this country is insured. So I think it's a good idea, and I don't think just because somebody is an illegal immigrant that they ought to have ready access to our emergency rooms to get their health care at a vastly higher cost to the American taxpayer. I think it's much more sensible to have them insured. So I think the President's plan on having them insured has merit. I do think the President wants this bill to pass, and that's why he held back on his bill to allow the Senate to propose a bill and put a bill together, and they're remarkably similar. There are some differences. One crucial difference is, at least as presently discussed, the Senate bill would hold back some of the access of illegal immigrants to a path to green card status until we have proof of greater border security. The Obama plan would not do that. Frankly, I see those two as not specifically related items, but it doesn't matter. It's moot because Obama is for increasing border security and has increased border security much more than President Bush did. And in fact, 80% fewer border crossings have happened since 2000. So they tackle it differently, but the result's the same. The other thing that the two bills do that is the same is that they do increase or propose to increase visa numbers. They propose to increase the ability of people to get on a track, specifically farm workers. It's interesting how even Senator Rubio recognizes that it is important in this country to welcome those who are already living here, especially those who are youngest, and allow them to get on the path to citizenship. So the two bills are the two proposals are very similar, and I think they're salutary. And I believe that the Senate will pass a bill, and the President will support it. And I believe that via Democratic senators, they'll propose some amendments to it. But I think it's incredible how close they are.
The only question I have, and I'll ask this of both of you because it's a question that I hear constantly from the middle, and that is, guys, what part of illegal do you not get?
The part of 11 million people that cannot be rounded up and sent out of here, nor should they be. And especially younger people, and especially hardworking people, and especially people who have served in our military.
I'll go with that one, and maybe that's a way to get there. But what do you tell the millions of people who are legal aliens? They went through, they did it the right way.
Well, part of the problem with the way the immigration law works now is that we have a very, very small number of people who can become American citizens a year. And if you apply legally for American citizenships, your chances of getting it are 1 in 250. That's what the averages are. But if you want to be at the head of the line, then all you have to do is be a relative of somebody who's already here. So what needs to be done is in fundamental immigration reform, which I don't think we're going to get fundamental immigration reform. I think we're going to get something that becomes incredibly costly to the taxpayers. I don't think we're going to have border security. Bob is correct that border crossings are down, and the fastest way to reduce border crossings is to have a lousy economy, because then there's not the reason to come here to work because there aren't any jobs. And so Obama's done a great job in 4 years of running a terrible economy, so therefore the immigrants haven't been coming. And a few of them have been leaving, but not many. The simple solution is this: a guest worker permit. You pass the background check, you get a guest worker permit, you can come in, you can stay for as long as 2 years, and then you can go home and you can use it back and forth. And then every 2 years you have to re-register and go through another background check to make sure that you haven't committed a crime. Now, that way you get what Bob wants, which is people who want to work hard can come to this country and work hard, and they can come and go. And which is what most immigrants, especially the illegal ones from Mexico, They come in here illegally because they're looking for work, and there's nothing wrong with that. Then they won't go back because they're scared they won't be able to get back in. So the guest worker permit solves that problem. My big problem with the way that the Democrats and Obama is approaching it is that this is going to be a hugely expensive bill. This will add $50 billion a year to our health care entitlement programs, and it becomes an entitlement. The lifetime benefit for a 30-year-old, under Obamacare for an immigrant, illegal immigrant, is $250,000. So what you're doing is you're saying you've gotten to be here illegally, you got here illegally, and we're going to reward you with a health care plan that over the course of your life is worth in subsidies that taxpayers will pay $250,000. And that's just wrong.
And that completely ignores the value of having that immigrant in this country working hard, creating economy, paying taxes. These people are not here doing nothing. They are here working hard, creating businesses. And the bipartisan plan that this Senate group, the Gang of Eight, have proposed recognizes that. It permits workers who've succeeded in the workplace and contributed to their communities to earn green cards. Stay here. It's totally inefficient to have people have to come and go and come and go. You talk about expense. We need to encourage people to stay. And both proposals do that, especially with the DREAM Act equivalent proposals in each, where a young person who was born in this country, brought into this country illegally, but born in this, parents came illegally, but the child was born in this country, is an American citizen. That child ought to have a clear path to citizenship, and those who are already here need to have a path based on good education, based on military service. Both of the proposals have that. It's salutary, it's good, it's a way to bring our nation together, I think.
Well, those are the exceptions rather than the rule. Let me just, Bob, I think you said something that you may not have meant, and that is, if you are born here to illegal aliens, you are an American citizen.
Yes.
You already are.
Yeah. Yes.
So you don't need a path to citizenship.
Correct.
You already are an American citizen. Your parents aren't, but you are.
Right.
And I am for allowing anybody who wants to come here to work to come here to work. I'm absolutely for that. What I'm against is the idea that somebody can come here illegally, which they've done. That's fine. They're here. If they want to stay and work and get a guest worker pass, I'm fine with that. But the idea of giving a $250,000 health care lifetime benefit to somebody who is here illegally is simply unaffordable. It is impractical. And what we're going to do, frankly, financially, it won't be many years before our deficits won't be $1 trillion. They'll be a trillion and a half, $2 trillion, and at some point, it all falls apart.
Flip the coin. What if I decide to go across the border and just don't tell anybody and decide to figure out a way to go to work in Mexico when I get caught? What happens to me?
Well, if you can get a job down there and keep yourself safe, bless you.
Well, but I'm just asking.
I think he said if he sneaks across the border.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem. I think in Mexico, if you sneak across the border and get arrested, if you didn't go into the country with a visa and whatnot, I think you go to prison.
Yeah, somebody just did that. Remember, they went over there with a shotgun, got themselves arrested?
He checked in at the checkpoint going across and had the paperwork that authorized him to have the shotgun.
I'll tell you what. I love Mexico, and I've got some wonderful Mexican friends, but with the drug war going on down there right now, I think you ought to stay here.
I think I need to stay here, too. Tell you what, I will stay here and come back next week for our next edition of Political Soup. Bob Toop, thank you for being here.
Great pleasure.
Mr. Carmichael, as always. Oh, we got it back. I like that. We'll go both sides here. I'm Joe Williams. Thank you so much. Think we're not having fun? See you next time on Political Soup.